Hi guys! Guess what? It's National Storytelling Week and I'm so excited. In addition to being a fabulous freelance writer, I am also a fiction author, so I spend an awful lot of time writing stories. Stories like these, and a load of others, all of which you can find on Amazon. You'll forgive me for that little shameless plug. But I'm not here today to talk about my fiction. I'm here to talk about stories and how they can be used in your blogging and in your business to really create a super powerful brand and an astonishingly compelling message. I don't just use stories for fiction. I use them in everything. I use them in my own blogging, I use them in the blogs that I write for my clients, I use them in sales copy and pretty much any kind of writing that I do. Stories really are absolutely phenomenally powerful. And if you are familiar with the term corporate storytelling, you may already be aware that stories are often used in business narratives to help sell things. Now, I'm going to be talking next week in the regular vlog all about corporate storytelling and how you can use that to supercharge your business. But for today, I really just want to focus on stories and why they're so amazing. Now, you may or may not know that I have a background in archaeology and research. One of my main areas of interest is mythology, and really myths are stories. And mythology actually explains the reason that stories have such astonishing power over us. Think about it for a second. We take for granted the written word, we take for granted our stories. They're on every page of every newspaper, they're in every book, they're in our phones, they're on our computers, they're in our Kindles. We literally have 24-hour access to as many stories as we could possibly want or need via the internet. It doesn't end. But the world wasn't always like that. Long before the technological advances that gave us e-readers and even printed books, mankind was still telling stories. Before we'd even figured out how to put pen to paper and create the written word, we were still telling stories. Stories were in fact the core of our culture and heritage in a time before we had things that could explain everything for us and things that could record everything for us and ways of passing information back and forth ridiculously quickly. As far back as written records go, we have stories. And many of the first stories that were ever written down, not just in Britain but all around the world, were written accounts of oral stories that have been passed down generation to generation for hundreds if not thousands of years. As far as we're aware, humankind have been telling each other stories for as long as they have been able to talk. They have been scratching them in cave walls in the most rudimentary styles. They have been doing everything they can to use their stories to convey one simple thing: a message. Stories really are a universal language. Now, if you want to know the really fascinating thing about mythology, it's not that every culture in the world has its own version of mythology, it's that every single culture in the world has such similar mythology. The time they were telling each other these stories was long before we had aeroplanes and trains and cars and even boats that were capable of traversing great distances. So how on earth did these stories get passed all around the globe? The simple answer is they didn't. Different cultures evolved their own stories. And the reason this is so interesting is because different cultures have versions of the same stories over and over again all around the world. Almost every culture we know about has some version of a creation myth, the story of where we came from. Everyone has myths about heroes, everyone has myths about villains, everybody has myths that explain how the weather works, how certain major landmarks, features, things in their world came into being. Stories were the way that people explain the world before we had science to do it for us. Stories speak to us on a really basic level, almost a primal level. They tap into areas of our psyche, areas of our subconscious that we don't really pay attention to, but that are really, really powerful. Think about all those fairy tales that you're so intimately familiar with. How many of them are, at their core, a tale of rags to riches, like Cinderella, or a tale of a quest, like the search for the Holy Grail? How many of them are, in essence, nothing more than a hero's journey? How many of them, when you actually break them down, are really the same story, but with different characters? These types of stories are really, really powerful. We don't need to have the same details in them to be able to understand them. If you told the same story to two different people from two different cultures in two different languages and used their own cultural context as the details of the story would be the same, it would be told differently, but the meaning would still be understood. Stories have universal meanings, meanings that speak to us on such a deep level that we can't help but respond to them. If you know how to use stories and tell stories and weave stories into your brand and into your marketing, you can literally make people do whatever you want them to do. It's actually quite terrifying. Say you want your brand to represent something in particular, you have a particular ideal. What better way to epitomise your brand than to use stories to reinforce the message that you are trying to put out there? If you are constantly telling narratives that trigger a deep understanding in people of these messages, that make them think of other familiar stories that they know, that are really memorable and help them to actually understand quite complex information that you're telling them, why on earth wouldn't you use that? Stories are just epic. Stories have been teaching us things for hundreds and thousands of years. They are the easiest way to get across information. They are the most powerful, emotional and viscerally felt messages if you use them correctly. Stories are the key to skyrocketing your business, I promise you. You just have to know how to use them. You just have to know why they're powerful and how to harness that power for yourself and tell your own stories in your own way. You can infuse your brand with stories. You can infuse your brand with the most powerful stories there are, which are called archetypes. Now, archetypes are the types of stories that I've been referring to, the ones that are the same story told over and over again with the details slightly different. You can use them. You just have to know what they are and what each of them is for. All you need to do is change the details in the story to fit you and your message and your brand. And suddenly you have the most powerful brand imaginable because it's talking to people on a level so deep, so primal, and so impossible to ignore that they won't have any choice but to get behind what you're saying, to react to it. Now, not all of them are going to love it. I'm not saying this is a way of making people universally love you. You will still have the fact that some people like you, some people don't like you. But the people that do like you, they are going to connect to you so well, so deeply that you're going to have clients for life. You are going to have a super powerful brand. Now, if you sat there thinking, what the hell is she talking about? I don't get it. Don't worry. It's not a difficult concept to grasp, but it does take a little bit of explaining to get you to see the exact archetypes and how they work, and the exact messages that are carried in stories, and the exact way that you can actually use this in your business to further your brand and build an absolutely rock solid, irresistible brand. It does take a bit of time, it does take a bit of explaining, and this is literally all I do, okay? So if you've watched any of my videos previously, you've probably heard me mention the Divine Blogging Design. This is my signature method, and this is the core of it. This is it. This is what it's all about. Stories. My whole business is based on stories. And now that I have this wonderful little vlog up and running, I am going to be telling you all about them all the time, I promise. So if you sat there thinking, well, it's all very well saying that, but I don't really get it yet, that's fine. If you sat there thinking, God, you're right, this is so interesting, I want to know how to use this in my business, don't worry about it, I'm going to tell you. Next week on the vlog, I'm going to be sharing exactly how you can use corporate storytelling to really, really supercharge your business and to make your blog your most powerful marketing tool ever. And it's not going to end there, there's going to be a lot more to come. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you never ever miss a video. And I will be back very soon with more details on exactly why stories are the best thing that has ever happened to your business.